Hello, this is revision recording number 6. This is for AQA Business Studies GCSE, and we're on to Unit 2, which is the Year 11 work, and this looks at growing businesses and how they react and respond to all the different topics. And the first topic in Unit 2 is the business organisation. The first thing to look at is business growth, and why do businesses want to expand? Well, they want to increase their sales, which may lead to increased profit. However, profit might be affected by the increased costs of growth, so that has to be looked at very carefully. Most businesses want to increase their market share, which is to take sales off their competitors. This might mean that more people will deal with you, as in people will supply you, and it depends what your competitors are doing. You might be trying to win their customers, but they're trying to get hold of yours. You're seen as more secure if you're a larger business, and banks are more likely to lend. Customers are more likely to come to you. They think you're reliable, you're a big business. But big businesses can fail too, so that's the negative on that one. And you can take advantage of what's called economies of scale, which is where things get cheaper to make the more you make of them. And we'll look at those later on in the course towards the end of Year 11. It can be harder to manage larger businesses, so that's a downside of business growth. Other reasons not to expand might be that if you're a small business and you run it, you're the owner, you keep control if you're a small business. If you then grow and you've got lots of employees, it can be harder to control what's going on. You can give a personal service from a small business, whereas with lots of employees it can be harder to monitor that. It avoids the risk of growth. If you're a small business, you're ticking along quite happily, and you don't need to grow, you can pay your way, then you avoid spending that money and taking the risk. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups. And you avoid the stress and the worry of growing a business. Methods of business expansion, so ways to grow. There's some of these swanky words here that we're so fond of in business. There's something called organic growth and something called inorganic growth. Now, organic growth just means growing from within the business. So it means that you might be opening another shop or franchising the business so other people use your name to sell products. Or you might set up a website and sell online. That's all organic growth. That's coming from within the business. It's slower, it's steadier, it's less risky, because you're taking your time to do it. You can do it with retained profit, with money that you've got left over in the business. You can grow the business. You don't need to borrow money from outside, and it's easier to control because it's steadier. However, it can take longer, and if your competitors are growing more quickly, you could lose market share while you grow slowly. So that's why some businesses use inorganic growth, which means that they buy another business or merge with another business. This might be a takeover or a merger, and there are various disadvantages and advantages associated with these two methods. A takeover is very often quite an aggressive thing to do, so one business buys out another business, and obviously that can lead to demotivation amongst the staff of the business where it's been brought out. A merger is where two businesses come together and agree to work together and to form one company, which is a lot less aggressive but still can lead to staff demoralisation, demotivation, wondering what's going to happen to them, and it's got to be managed well. You can take advantage of economies of scale. You can take advantage of the fact that you might not need so many staff at head office, so it's going to save you money, but obviously then there's going to be some redundancies, and that can make your workers feel demotivated as well. So that's takeovers and mergers, and that's inorganic growth. Inorganic growth is where you grow outside of the business, so you're growing quite quickly. If you haven't got to take time to set up more shops, but you just buy shops that are already there and already trading, that's inorganic growth, and it's quicker. However, you're probably going to need some kind of finance to do that, because it's going to be expensive to buy another business, so you probably need a loan or to sell shares. And if you're taking over another business or merging with another business, it's going to be difficult to control and manage that, just from going from a smaller business to that. if you buy something, a business that's not related to what you're already doing, and I'll talk about that and what that's called in a minute, the management might not have experience of that product, and they might lack experience so that it's hard to manage the business. The different ways that you can go into different businesses, I've got some very swanky words in business, but basically you've got something called horizontal integration. So if I'm a car manufacturer, I buy another car manufacturer. They're doing the same as me. That's horizontal. Think about what horizontal means. It means going along on the same line, doesn't it? Flat. So we're buying another business the same as ours. That's horizontal integration. If we buy a completely different business, so I'm a car manufacturer and I buy a medical supplies manufacturer, completely different to what I already do. That's called diversification. Now, the benefits of that are that I could be spreading the risk. I could be saying, well, actually, I'm not sure that cars are going to keep selling well forever, so I'm going to buy something completely different and hope that that sells well in the future. The downside of that might be that the management haven't got a clue what they're doing, and that it can be very difficult to sort that out. The other form of integration of inorganic growth is to buy on what's called vertical integration, where you think about your chain of distribution and you either go backwards or forwards on that chain of distribution. So if I'm a car manufacturer, if I have vertical backward integration, I buy one of my parts suppliers. If you think about that chain of distribution, if my parts supplier are selling into me, that's vertical backwards integration. If I go for vertical forwards integration and I'm a car manufacturer, I might buy a car showroom, I might buy the retailer. This is easier to explain with diagrams, so have a look at the diagrams associated with this. But basically what you need to know is there's organic growth, which is growth from within the business, opening another shop or another branch, and there's inorganic growth, which is where you buy another business that's already trading. And that might be horizontal or vertical integration. Now, stakeholders are affected by business growth, and if you remember back to Unit 1, stakeholders are anybody affected by the business. So customers, employees, owners, the local community, government, environmental lobbyists, if you've got a company that's involved in something like that. And the stakeholder groups are affected in different ways. So owners might be affected by growth because they get higher level of sales and therefore profit, so they get richer. However, if the owners are also the business managers, they might find their workload increases, and they might have to pay out more money to the shareholders if they're a business, a limited company or a PLC. So obviously that decreases the share of the profits that the owners have got. For employees, if the business grows, they've got job security, there might be the prospect of promotion. However, depending on how the business grows, there might be employee losses, because if you've merged with another business and somebody else is already doing what you're doing in that other business, you might lose your job. Customers are affected by business growth in that prices might come down because the business can produce more cheaply now because of economies of scale, but it might mean prices go up because there's less competitors in the market. It also might affect product quality. For example, when Kraft bought out Cadbury's, there was a big backlash amongst customers about that, and a lot of people say dairy milk isn't the same quality anymore. I'll let you be the judge of that. Suppliers are affected by business growth because they might get more orders from your business, so they'll be happy. But a bigger company is going to put pressure on suppliers to reduce their prices, so that might not be so good for suppliers. The government are affected by business growth because it makes us have a stronger economy in this country, which means more taxes are being paid to the government to do what they do. It creates more jobs, which obviously makes the government look good, and they can stand up there and say unemployment is at its lowest rate, and that's because of business growth. However, if a company gets too big in the market, a monopoly, that means they've got a monopoly. They control too much of the market share, so that can actually be damaging to consumers, and that's where government might get involved and say, your company's too big, you need to break it up. And then the local community benefits from a larger business because there's increased jobs then in the local community. However, drawbacks to that might be that the new owners might not be so interested in the local business. And again, we've looked at Cadbury's and Kraft taking over Cadbury's. Cadbury's traditionally were very good to the local community, set up schools, built houses for its workers, and of course a big American company such as Kraft aren't going to be interested in doing that. If your business is growing and you've got a limited company, which means you've got a couple of shareholders who may or may not be involved in running the business, you probably don't have to pay them dividends because they're just what's called nominal. You just have to name some shareholders. Then you might find, as your business grows and grows and gets a lot bigger, that you want to become a PLC. Now the difference is then that you sell shares in your business to the public. And that's why it's a public limited company, a PLC. Both of these have limited liability, so the debt is the business's debt, not the owner's debt. Both of them can sell shares. Both of them give the company more status than a sole trader or a partnership. Both of them have to make their accounts public, so they have to employ accountants and have annual general meetings. And they both might pay dividends if there's a profit, so they pay dividends out to their shareholders, which means the shareholders make some money. However, the difference is, with a limited company, the shares aren't sold in public. You only sell shares from a limited company to family or friends, and you keep, therefore, more control of your business. Once you sell on the stock exchange, and obviously your business has got to be massive to be able to do this, then anyone can buy shares in your business, and therefore they're going to have a say in what happens in your business, so you have less control over it. However, you can raise a lot of money by selling shares to the public on the stock exchange. So if your business, you want to grow your business significantly, you want to expand abroad and you need to raise £1 million, £50 million, then you can raise money on the stock exchange. And that's the difference between a limited and a PLC. Now, as the businesses grow, it might be that you need to change location. The ideal location for your business is one that keeps your costs down, maximises your revenue, and is in keeping with the image of the brand. That's important, because if your brand is a high-end brand, you've got to make sure that your customers feel good about where you're located. Mostly the factors to consider with business location is the same as small businesses. So for example, the cost of the site, how much does the labour cost in that area, the workers, transport, can we get to that place, where are my suppliers, where are my customers, and where's the competition. Management preferences, though, with a growing business might have an influence. For example, when the BBC were moving out of London to Salford, a lot of the people who worked there said, we're not moving there. So the BBC had a problem. And senior employees didn't want to move. Now, looking at location again, a lot of businesses, as they grow, actually grow and move abroad. The benefits of this are that prices are often a lot cheaper, especially for sites or land. The costs of labour are cheaper. You can avoid trade barriers. So if you want to export goods to a certain country, it might be that government of that country charges you to export goods to that country, whereas if you're actually manufacturing the goods in the country, you don't pay those import duties there. And for example, you can go to countries where the economies are growing really quickly and take advantage of being part of that economy and selling to the consumers in that country. For example, like Brazil, Russia, India, China. A multinational company is a business with operations in more than one country. Globalization means that goods are traded internationally, or companies are located abroad. And then offshoring is where companies make products or parts in other countries, or you could have an offshore call centre, which means that you employ people in India to answer your customer service calls, and that's very common, as we know. Problems of locating abroad could be that you've got language differences, so actually communicating with your workforce, communicating with your customers might be difficult. Transport costs will increase if you're bringing goods back to the UK. There might be some anger in the UK if you close down production facilities here, and therefore there's been jobs lost, so you get bad publicity from that. The quality of your product or your service might not be as good. For example, the call centre staff in India might not understand the customer problems, or you might get faults in the goods made abroad that you wouldn't get if you were able to monitor that in the UK. And cultural differences mean that if you're trying to sell a product in a different country, the preferences of people in that country might be different to the ones at home. So you might have to change your product to adapt to the customers abroad, and that obviously costs money. The last part of this rather long unit is talking about changing aims and objectives of growing businesses. Now think back to you changing your aims and objectives of small business. You think of your pigs, your profit, increased market share, growth and survival. Your profit, increased market share and growth still apply for a larger business, but the one that's not so dominant for a growing business is survival. They've already passed that early stage. They're growing. That's the whole point. So survival isn't such a key objective, but obviously they still want to survive. But bigger businesses are likely to have aims such as ethical environmental objectives. And these are good because it's good to be seen as a large company, to be doing something for the environment. It's good publicity, it's good PR, and it makes customers feel good about the business and trust the company and return to the company. Workers feel more motivated, so it's easier to find good workers and keep them because everyone thinks, oh, this is a good business to be around with, to be working for. As sales rise because of the increased publicity, the increased customer trust, then hopefully your profit should go up. Of course, there's certain laws out there that mean because companies have to protect the environment in a certain way. There's laws on how you have to behave. For example, with electrical goods, the companies that produce those are supposed to take them back from customers when they've finished with them and dispose of them. Public opinion about the environment. So if you're a big company and you pollute heavily, then you're going to get some bad PR on that. So it's a good idea to be good and to make sure your pollution is minimised. And then consumer pressure wants more fair trade, more fair wages to workers. There's all sorts of campaigns out there, so it's good for companies to be seen to be doing the right thing. However, it might cost more money, especially in the short term while you implement changes. Your shareholders might not be too happy because you're reducing your profit down, especially in the short term, so they're going to get less dividends. But hopefully in the long term, anything like that where you're seen to be doing the right thing will impact your profit positively and therefore give them more dividends in the long term. So that's the end of that first topic in Unit 2.